Picture this. It is the middle of the night, the temperature outside is somewhere below freezing, and you have to go. Not to a bathroom down the hall, not to a door 20 feet from your bed. You have to put on boots, grab a candle or nothing at all, walk 50 or 100 feet across a dark yard, and sit down in a wooden box over a hole in the ground. That was not a punishment. That was Tuesday. That was every night, for almost every American, for almost all of American history. We do not think about this, because it is the one part of daily life nobody wrote songs about, but the outhouse, the chamber pot, and the hole in the ground shaped American architecture, American disease, and American daily routine for over 200 years, and most of that story disappeared within a single generation once indoor plumbing arrived. Let us start with the outhouse itself, because it was not one simple design. It was a small wooden structure, usually built directly over a dug pit, positioned deliberately far from the house, and, if the family had any sense, downhill from the water well. That distance mattered enormously, and most families did not get it right. A pit toilet placed too close to a well was one of the single biggest causes of contaminated drinking water in early America, and nobody fully understood why until well into the 1800s. Families were poisoning their own water supply with their own waste and calling it bad luck when the children got sick. Inside, the setup was almost identical from Maine to Georgia, a wooden bench with 1 or 2 holes cut into it, sized for adults, and sometimes a smaller hole cut lower down for children. No flush, no water. Waste simply dropped into the pit below and stayed there until the pit filled up, at which point the entire structure was moved to a freshly dug hole and the old pit was covered with dirt. A family outhouse might get relocated every few years. This is a detail almost nobody today would guess. The bathroom itself was a building that physically walked around the property over a lifetime. Now, the question everyone actually wants answered. What did people use instead of toilet paper? Because toilet paper as a manufactured product did not exist in America in any real form until the 1850s, and even then, it was expensive and treated as a small luxury for decades after. Before that, the answer depended entirely on where you lived and what was lying around. Corncobs were extremely common in rural farming areas, kept in a small basket or box right inside the outhouse. And yes, that is exactly as rough as it sounds. Newspapers and mail order catalogs became popular once cheap paper printing spread in the 1800s. A worn-down Sears catalog hanging on a nail inside an outhouse was such a common image that it became an actual piece of American folklore. Leaves, moss, and even smooth stones were used, depending on the season and the region. Wealthier households used rags that were washed and reused, which sounds shocking today, but was completely ordinary at the time. Winter made everything harder. A nighttime trip to an outhouse in a Minnesota winter or a Vermont winter was genuinely dangerous, not just unpleasant. This is exactly why the chamber pot existed indoors, a covered ceramic or metal pot kept under the bed or in a corner, used at night and emptied into the outhouse pit the next morning. Emptying the chamber pot was a daily chore, usually assigned to whoever was lowest in the household hierarchy. And in cities, that waste sometimes went straight into the street gutter instead of a proper pit, which tells you almost everything you need to know about why disease spread the way it did in early American cities. And that is the part of this story people genuinely do not know. Before proper sanitation, American cities were dealing with waste-related disease on a scale that is hard to picture today. Cholera outbreaks tore through New York and other major cities multiple times in the 1800s, and for decades, doctors did not correctly understand that contaminated water was the cause. It took until the mid to late 1800s for cities to start building real sewer systems, and rural America lagged even further behind. Plenty of farmhouses were still using an outhouse well into the 1930s and 1940s, and in some pockets of the rural South and Appalachia, outhouses remained in regular use into the 1950s and even the 1960s. This was not some distant medieval practice. This was inside the living memory of people's grandparents. The flush toilet itself had actually been invented far earlier than most people assume, with early versions patented in England back in the 1770s. But invention and adoption are two completely different timelines. A working flush toilet needs a pressurized water source and a sewer or septic system to drain into, and most of rural America simply did not have that infrastructure until electricity and rural water systems expanded dramatically in the mid-1900s. The technology existed for well over a century before most American households could actually use it. So, the next time you complain about a bathroom being down the hall instead of attached to your bedroom, remember that your great-great-grandparents were walking across a frozen yard in the dark, sitting over a hole in the ground and reaching for a corncob. Indoor plumbing is not some ancient convenience. It is one of the newest, most transformative pieces of technology in the history of everyday American life, and it arrived far more recently than almost anyone realizes. If stories like this scratch an itch you didn't know you had, subscribe. Every video, one piece of everyday history nobody teaches you, told the way it actually happened.